All right, there we go. All right,
Right.
so first of all, like the album Serpents in the Fields of Sleep is amazing. I have to say that. Been listening
Thank
to
you.
it on repeat. And like that, of course now we have church bells going off. Go figure.
How appropriate.
Right? Like foreshadowing what's yet to come.
Good.
Um,
I'm very glad to hear you like the album.
it's
It
amazing.
took its time.
It's so beautiful too. It's so dark. And like my first question is about the album artwork. Like it looks like a charcoal drawing and it has like two serpents or snakes like coiled around a black or dark mass. So
Yes.
my first question is like what are the serpents doing at the start of like the very first song? Like if the artwork were to come alive.
Wow. I think the theme of the album kind of represents it's I haven't really thought about it in the way you asked the question because to me I think the serpents in the fields of sleep it has some connotations about graveyards and death of course obviously and the first song might not be about the serpents themselves, but more of yourself leaving redemption behind and leaving all that is safe, so to speak. And the serpent later on kind of becomes the guardians of how you transcend into the unsafe or unknown, so to speak.
Okay. That's interesting.
Does
Yeah,
it make sense? It's kind
it
of
does.
abstract, but we like it to be mysterious.
Well, I mean, you kind of go on a visual journey when you're listening to the music. And when you were creating it, what were some of the visuals that you saw, like as you were composing the music?
Um, Maybe not as much visuals, but maybe more stories that each one I think kind of interpret visually differently. Um, but I think in a way I wanted the album to feel exactly like a journey, as you say. I mean that it's not 10 different songs, even though they are kind of different, but I wanted to have like a deeper connection that you can feel that you're actually moving somewhere and that you go from a point and can feel a red thread. And I mean, Anima Morte has always been about death and zombies and like the 70s kind of Italiano movie scene. But I think this time we wanted to go deeper and kind of write our own story, so to speak. So I think that is the most important thing, even though I know everybody will kind of feel their own personal journey when listening to it. I think just to have all the songs to have their own kind of distinct um, personality was the most important thing, I think.
Okay. Yeah, what was the reasoning behind choosing the title for Serpents in the Field of Sleep? Field.
That is actually the kind of seeing a graveyard or like a dark cemetery. I mean that is the fields of sleep where all everybody's dead, and the serpents is kind of and has been like in mythology and so on, kind of the guardian for that transcendence and especially hidden knowledge and all of that. So I think that was we wanted to combine that in our own sense, so to speak.
Okay. That's interesting. It's really cool. Like what what about like through because it's the seventh track on the album. Like, where do you feel the serpents? Like, which songs do you feel the serpents like appear in first, or is it at the seventh track?
That is kind of the uh, since it's called the serpents of in the fields of sleep. I think that is the manifestation of the serpents, so to speak. Um, but everything, I mean, up to that has kind of lent to the same red thread, I think, but maybe not as, you know, if you would see it as a movie, maybe that is where you would actually see the serpents, and uh, before that you kind of have been having small leads on maybe they are it is the
Okay.
serpents. I mean, um, it's very interesting to think about, okay, how would you translate this into the actual movie?
I
How
know,
would that
like,
look? Because it's you have the luxury when you're dealing with music, and it's not even like there's no lyrics or anything, to be kind of vague and abstract. So it will be a lot up to the listener how they interpret the journey, so to speak.
okay, yeah, like, how do I word this? Um, like, okay, so you released the video for Blood of the Iconoclast, or
Yes.
Iconoclast, however you pronounce it. And how that's definitely not a depiction of it visually. It's more of the like actual composition and
Yeah.
creation of the music.
Yeah.
Like, how do you feel that really represents the album?
I think we have for the earlier albums we have always done like documentaries behind the scenes and when we were recording it.
Yeah.
And this time we haven't really done that. We might release more things afterwards, but I think we wanted to pick up the pieces and show the recording of it, as opposed to doing a video which is like, okay, how would we visualize it? And I think for us it, we decided pretty early on that we wanted to do this video, and that the material we were going to have would probably be the studio recordings. So I think it was just an early decision that we kind of went with. So it was towards the end not a big question of should we do something else. And I mean, since we worked on the album so long, we recorded the first pieces in 2018. So it's been a long recording as well. So
Okay.
uh, we wanted to kind of document that as well, and the video became the means for that, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah. And when you were coming up with some of these songs, like, did were you like watching something that sparked inspiration to create, or was it something completely different, like walking down the sidewalk and seeing a cemetery or a snake, or just out
Good
of nowhere?
question. I think it becomes harder to actually pinpoint things, since it was such a long process, even with the writing of the songs. Some of them are pretty old by now, and was kind of with us since the beginning, and they have never like they never came together until this album. So that in itself was pretty interesting to feel that it kind of grow into this cohesive work that was. inspired by, movies, everything in between. Um, like H.P. Lovecraft stories and all that kind of things. Like those things have been kind of with us from the beginning, so to speak. And I can't really think of, something that is so specific that this song is exactly about that, or that song came because I saw this movie. So it's all kind of, in that sense, it's kind of blurry. The
Okay.
inspiration for each song. Yeah, I'm sorry, I I can't come up with something more interesting, but that is how it is. But in general, I mean, we have been very inspired by horror movies, and especially Italian horror movies over our
Yeah.
record career. So I mean, I think those things, even if we don't watch them at night and then the day after write a song, I think it kind of, I mean, it becomes a blueprint of your imagination
Yeah.
in some ways, regardless.
Yeah. Since you mentioned H.P. Lovecraft, like you've created music for like the readings of them, which is really, really cool. So how do you
Yeah.
feel how do you feel that like really makes you connect with the stories more versus just listening to them or just reading them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fantastic thing to score a reading like that, because I read a lot of Lovecraft when I was younger, and then I think it kind of, you know, you remembered some of parts, and some were like pretty blurry, because if you read something once, you don't pick up on the details. And this I have noticed so much when we do the scorings, because you listen to the same pieces over and over, and there are so many small details that, like, this is really important for the story, like in 20 minutes away, and it's like, so you pick up all these leads of where the story is going, that you would have missed otherwise. And there's also like, it's an opportunity, but also a responsibility to set the right mood for where you're going with it. So, I mean, if you're too making things too scary, it kind of loses the edge. Or if you kind of don't get where a theme presents itself, and when it becomes important, kind of miss out on a good opportunity to connect the story throughout, so to speak.
Okay. Yeah. Did like when you create the music for those stories, do you go back, well, before like it's even read or out loud by Andrew Lemon, I believe that's how you
Yeah.
pronounce his name. Um, and he sounds a lot like the guy who narrated Forensic Files. The
Uh, I think, I mean, we get the reading from Jonathan, from Cadabra. So and it's always Andrew that we worked with so far, and I think he has a phenomenal reading because it's so musical. So like the first thing we do is like listen back to back, and like, okay, this is how the story goes, and start, to remind ourselves of what is the major arc of the story. And then we start, okay, what is the since the format is vinyl, we need to know, okay, how much will fit on a side, and from there on, it's like, okay, what scenes is there, and how many will be on each side, and are they coming back to the same places, and so on. So you kind of set what kind of moods are we talking about, moods and scenes mostly. And when we got that, it's really, really important to figure out what kind of tempo the music will kind of, because it's easy to accelerate or kind of make something not as interesting by kind of slowing down the tempo or having a too fast tempo. So then we can make some small cuttings in, like, okay, he's usually very good at pauses, but just to make them, you know, come together with the musical um, cutting, so to say.
Okay. Yeah, it's really cool that there are like tracks like that that exist because you'd never really, well, I mean, it kind of reminds you of like those old stories, like those old radio shows from like the 1920s, 1930s that have the drama and the music behind it. It's so cool
Yeah.
because there's not a lot of that out there now at all.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's a really, I think it's a great medium to tell a story like that, for
Yeah.
sure. And that's, I hope it's coming back. I
Yeah.
think Jonathan is doing a great job in providing spoken word art like that. So really happy to work with him.
Yeah. Um, do you have any like favorite stories that you worked on?
Mm, yeah, I think the first stories we did was Dagon, Cats of Ulthar, and the Music of Eric San. And I think those three was on a vinyl, and since those were the first ones, they are like pretty close to the heart because we were still like, okay, figuring out how we should approach the medium with a storyteller. It's like it fits us very well, but you know, how do we do it, and like uh, will this work out, and so on. But I think we found like a new voice for our music that kind of becomes an underscore um, to the story without trying to be too much of, you know, what we are on a record, so to speak. And I think also Call of Cthulhu was it because it was so big in scope and also so classic. I had a lot of reverence to, you know, approach it, but very happy with, I think, where we were going with that one. And uh, the funny thing is that the more stories we work on, the more I also like see and figure out where he hids like leads for his mythos or universe. So I mean, he always references his other stories in some ways, or characters that kind of comes back, and so you can start to use a lot of the like themes or moods that like that he himself has invented in his stories that kind of come back, and that is kind of, now that the more we do, it becomes more interesting and more fun to like combine and trying to figure out uh, how they all fit together. So
Yeah, that's really cool. It's like kind of speaking through you in a way.
yeah.
Like you're unveiling more of his work.
Yeah, and I think also because Lovecraft, he was pretty generous with letting other people interpret his universe. I mean, other especially, he didn't like have think that he had a, just because he invented the Cthulhu mythos was not his to only work with. He kind of, everybody should be able to do that, and I think in that sense, I think it's like, oh, it's very fun that, I mean, it was meant for that to happen, and that it's still around today, uh, having that kind of impact.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, are you going to be doing any other stories soon?
Yes. Right
Any
now, I'm
hints
not
as
sure
to,
which ones are announced or not, but yeah, we have finished one pretty recently, and we have at least two more in the pipeline, but I can't say yet which ones it is, unfortunately.
all right, fair enough. Um, or how about this? Any hints as to what the story involves?
One of the stories involves rats, and the other involves sea creatures.
Okay.
So
Okay.
that's the lead, and then my lips are sealed.
All right. That would be hmm, interesting.
Yeah. But hopefully, I think we got something going, something to be released by next year. Not sure when, because also there's a kind of long printing vinyls today is like there's so long waiting period, so there's months and months.
Right.
So that is also like can't really tell when they're gonna be out or announced or so. But now that we are done with the album, I think we will have more focus time for the stories again.
Yeah. That's just it's so cool because yeah, I have not really heard of a band that does the background music for like audio books, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to the album art, and so the artwork was done by Randy Ortiz, and
Mm-hmm.
the design of it, Eric Adrian Lee. How do you feel like they both like I guess kind of encapsulated what the album was about through their art?
I think Randy contributed with the actual artwork. It kind of sets the mood, and it's like, as you said, it has a framing of something like the black sphere in the middle and the snakes and like the mysterious forest, and then Eric kind of brings the framing to that in a kind of, how should you say, it's sophisticated, maybe like a very nice classical design, and I think that kind of frames it well together,
Okay.
because I think it's hard to see if you only have the digital album cover, but when you see like the vinyl as it is, it becomes more apparent uh, what that means.
Okay. Yeah. Um, yeah. What now to go into your background a little bit, what initially attracted you to like start creating dark music in general? Because I also heard that you were in a death metal band as well.
Mm-hmm. I've been playing in a lots of bands back and forth. I think my my initial musical, I don't know, what would draw me to start creating music was film music from the beginning. And then, I mean, I've always been listening to scores, but metal and rock and progressive rock has also been like there. So I mean, they all, I don't know. I think it's the dark side of the music that kind of I'm drawn to, whether the expression is like metal or more classical scores. I think to me that doesn't matter that much, but I like to do different things, and I kind of could get bored if I would only do like metal. So right now I'm not doing any metal, but mostly scores. So we'll see if like that goes back and forth a bit. What I like to do. So I played in a band called Lock Vostok for quite long. They did like a really strange version of like Death Black and cheesy heavy metal. Like they they were all over the place. And another band called Flagellation, which was Daniel from Anima Morte played the guitars, and Teddy, who plays the drums, also played the guitars. So like that band was kind of put on ice, and we just continued working in Anima Morte.
Okay. Yeah. And what do you remember the film that you first saw with the music playing that really just captivated you and sparked your passion?
Yeah, yeah, I do. It was Good, the Bad, the Ugly. That one was really, I really took heart to that one. And yeah, Ennio Morricone has also been my favorite composer for a very long time. But I think also the first movies were not horror movies per se, but I think the composers of those were, I don't know, they brought sensibility and melody to the music that I didn't I didn't quite know how to, I don't know, express, because I thought from the beginning, I think I wanted to separate the old school, like classical sense of film music with something that was like different, I think. And I think that's where my angle to it all became. So I don't know, finding a niche maybe.
Okay.
But it's like today, I mean, at one point I think film music just sounds a lot alike, and today it's like trailer music sounds a lot alike. And it of course it takes a lot to know the craft to do that, but it's not terribly exciting because it doesn't have its own identity. And I think that is what I try to bring to the table when I write.
Okay. Yeah. And when you first started creating music, uh, who was the artist that, really like made you, I guess, want to compose and like play keyboards and whatnot?
Yeah, good question. I mean, this is also a lifetime of inspirations. Um, I mean, when I was a kid, I listened to a lot of Metallica and Iron Maiden and all that stuff, and I loved it, of course, still do. And I kind of, I think I wanted to play guitar at one point, and then I kind of started playing keyboard mostly because I wanted to arrange music in the music program, so it kind of became a tool for that. And then I think I just more drifted to playing keyboards without having any like favorite artist, maybe except for the Phantom of the Opera. But yeah, I think that was just I had a keyboard, and it became a useful tool in my writing more than being a keyboard player, so to speak. And then, of course, it seems that for a lot of metal bands, there are not that many keyboardists around. So
Yeah, not too many.
no, so
You know what?
I got my little niche of friends, and like they were all playing metal bands here in Stockholm, of course. So I became the guy you call for keyboard arrangements and so on.
Yeah, you know what? I've noticed that, if bands do have keyboardists, metal bands anyway,
Yeah,
they are from your part of the world.
yeah,
There's not too many from the US, but there's a lot, well, more than there are here in Sweden, Finland, Norway.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. those are all of my questions. So
All right.
yeah, so thank you so much for enlightening us and everybody who's going to be watching, like
Yeah.
on what your music is all about. It's really, really, really cool. So
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Really interesting questions and some that I have not really thought about. So I hope it doesn't come across as too abstract. But I'm
Not
very
at
happy to
all.
hear that you have enjoyed the album and also the Lovecraft stories as well. Really happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like it like brings a different life to audiobooks because if you listen to one that's just like a regular one, it's just all monotone and then you're like, okay, well I just may as well just read the book at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's cool to have that music and it like stimulates the visual aspect of it too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Frederick, for this amazing interview. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the evening over in
Yes.
Sweden.
Thank you. Thank you for this interview and have a great day.
Yeah. All right. Bye.
Bye.